Hi everyone, it's lovely to see you. I'm Lorna and we're reading The Secret Lake by Karen Ingalls, and this is chapter 18, Journey's End. The next morning before breakfast, Tom and Stella's mother called them into the sitting room and gently broke the news that Mrs. Moon had died peacefully during the night. The children stared at the wall behind their mother, each trying to take in what they had heard. Tears of frustration immediately began welling in Tom's eyes. Why, oh why did Mrs. Moon have to go and die now, just when their adventure had begun again? There was still so much to talk about, so much to try and understand, and with Mrs. Moon's help he felt certain they could have found the time tunnel and gone back again. Stella, sitting quietly beside him, was trying to imagine what dying or being dead must feel like. She felt strangely calm on hearing the news, content that Mrs. Moon was at last at peace with her beloved Harry. At the same time, it occurred to her that by going back down the time tunnel, they could, she supposed, if they got the dates right, bring Mrs. Moon back to life again and carry on with their secret adventure. Then she thought about what Mrs. Moon had told them. Perhaps they would meet her again one day in the future. After all, she had hinted at this, hadn't she? But then, without warning, it hit her. Mrs. Moon, Emma, was gone. They would probably never see her again. What about Harry? She whispered, as one after the other the tears rolled down her cheeks. Her mother sat down and put her arms around her. Not a sign of him anywhere. He hasn't been seen for over a week now. You know what? I think Margaret's going to find him. Stella tugged at a lock of her long blonde hair and began gently sobbing as she mulled over a host of unspeakable thoughts. I feel sorry for Charlie, said Stella on the morning after the funeral as they sat watching him pottering around his shed in the distance. He looks so lonely all of a sudden. Look how much more slowly he's moving about. He seems to have his head bowed all the time. Tom frowned at the grass between his shoes. He felt let down by Charlie Green, angry at him for not letting on he knew. He's coming this way, whispered Stella suddenly. She scrambled to her feet, slowly followed by Tom. Charlie was walking towards them, carrying a hold all, and as he approached they could see dark circles around his eyes, as if he hadn't slept for a week. Tom, who felt his cheeks turn purple, stared at the ground. Stella swallowed hard. As Charlie now stood before them, she wanted to say something, but she didn't know how. She was a wonderful lady, was Margaret, he said gently. And you know that better than most, don't you? He gave them a warm smile, then looked across towards the island. Still, she's happy now with Harry and all. I know, said Stella. Her arms hung heavily at her side. Charlie stepped forward and bowed his head toward Tom. I never meant to be gruff, Tom. It was just the moles. I was worried about them moles. You know how important they were to her, and Harry. Tom smiled stiffly, trying hard to avoid his stare. But then, as Charlie put his hand gently on his shoulder, a wave of warmth surged through him, sweeping away all of his anger. With relief, he found himself looking up at Charlie and smiling. And despite everything, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Well, it's getting late, said Charlie, picking up his hold-all. Time for me to head off. He smiled and gave a friendly wink. And don't you go worrying about your secret now. It's as safe as houses with me. He slowly turned and plodded off. Tom and Stella sat back down and watched Charlie disappear around the corner. Stella all the while smiling to herself as she lightly twirled her friendship bracelet. Already she had bought new thread and would begin renewing it before they started school. Tom lay back down in the grass and peered at the sky through the great arms of the tree. How relieved he felt to be free at last from the anger and suspicion he had felt about Charlie ever since they'd moved to the garden. Half an hour later they headed in for lunch. Charlie was here a while ago, said their mother as she dished pasta into 3 bowls. He left something for you both on top of the table there. She smiled and winked, said it was top secret and that you should open it in private. Tom immediately lunged at the small brown packet that lay on the kitchen table, then dashed outside. Stella followed right behind. Tom tore at the paper. Then, thump! Out fell Stella's orange torch, battered and worn onto the patio table. Stella clapped her hand to her mouth. Tom stood staring in silence, his heart starting to race. There's a note, squealed Stella. Tom snatched up the piece of paper. As he opened it out, the creases made a perfect cross where it had been folded in 4. And now, as they read what was written in front of them, neither Tom nor Stella flinched. Dear Tom and Stella, I meant to return this torch you gave my father sooner, but what with Mrs. Moon falling ill, I'm afraid I forgot. My father told me all about how he came by it. Quite a story that was. Flash Jack and his light, people used to call him. He got up to all sorts of tricks with it. You know, he worked here when I was a boy, just like my grandfather did before him. That's how I got to know the gardens and the magical moles. I'm going to miss Margaret now she's gone. I would have told her about my family when I realised she was Emma Gladstone, but I didn't want to add to her confusion. Still, I hope I helped her get along in her final years by helping Harry come and go through the tunnel. Well, my time here's spent. There's gardens up near where I live need tending to. I'm not as young as I used to be, and it'll be easier working closer to home. I'm sorry we can't spend more time together. Still, I hope you'll continue to enjoy the garden. Look after each other, won't you? And mind them moles. Charles Green. Charlie's Jack's son, gasped Tom. He threw the note down and raced out to the patio gate into the gardens. Charlie, where are you? He yelled. Charlie, Charlie! The name echoed all around the garden and up through the trees, and seemed, for a moment, to become part of everything. What on earth's all that about? Said their mother, staring out of the door. Stella snatched up the letter and stuffed it into her jeans pocket. Just Tom gone a bit bonkers, she said with a smile. She grabbed the torch from the patio table and dashed through the gate after him. He's gone, Stella, he's gone. Tom fought to hold back the tears as he walked back towards her. Stella stood and gazed out across the lawn towards the island. Well, she said with a smile, we were right after all about him using the tunnel, weren't we? How kind of him to help Margaret like that. It's exactly the sort of thing Jack would have done. Tom nodded as he followed Stella's gaze out across the lawn. Stella took a deep breath in, then sighed. At least we know for sure we didn't dream all of this. With a huge smile, she put her arm around her brother's shoulders and squeezed him close. As they walked back to the house, Tom felt surprisingly calm. He knew this was the end of their secret adventure, and yet in a strange sort of way, it felt like a new beginning. Mum, he said brightly, as they stepped back through the kitchen door. Stella squinted warily at him. When I'm older, Mum, I'm going to buy this flat from you, and the one above, and the one above that. Actually, he went on, his eyes widening with every word, it's going to be my home, with real fireplaces and everything, just like in the olden days. His mother chuckled. Why, whatever made you think of that, Tom? Tom grinned across at Stella and slowly but surely drew the letter T in the air. Unseen by her mother, Stella popped a lime-flavoured pole into her mouth and, as her ears began to tingle, she grinned across at her brother. Tom had made his mind up, and there would be no stopping him. The end.